Carl Callewaert. I'm actually already 9 years at Unity Technologies. So I followed the journey from a small community with 100 people in the company to about 3,000 people in a large community.
Yeah, and I've been at Unity. I'm Matt Schell. I've been at Unity for about 5 years now and have been through a smaller slice of that process, but it's been pretty interesting to go through.
So for me, the slice was going from pure field evangelism, visiting customers, to a large community and how we dealt with that. But I want a quick snapshot to give you about who we are at Unity and what we do. Understanding our community and what we do will understand you why we do certain tactics and why we do certain strategies. Our evangelism team is a global team around the world. We have more than 30 people engaging with the community from field, online, and with Inferences. If you've never heard of Unity, raise your hand who has never heard of Unity. Okay, we have several people who have never seen the light. Unity is the most widely used software or real-time development platform for rich interactive content. The beauty is in the software, you create it one time, and you can deploy it to 25 different platforms. So you make it one time, and you put the application or a game on an iPhone, Android, a PC. You can put it to Steam, Gear VR, all in one shot. Some examples are Beat Saber, made with Unity, but also if you look at games like Pokemon Go, or key Linux games, mobile, mainly with Unity. But we also enable AAA games, like the multiplayer aspect to it, and that is provided by Unity. But it's not only games. The community has scaled into, maybe an example is here from Wayfair AR, looking at the furniture placed in the room using Unity with your mobile device. But also films are using Unity. The CG animation of Baymax Dreams was done together with Disney and our internal team to produce a series of that. It also scaled to architecture. This is actually a snapshot of a real-time visualization walking through our London office. Personally, I cannot see the difference when I look at our real-time visualization and our real office. I don't see a difference. Before the joke, we make sometimes pictures and we should put them next to each other and nobody knows if it's real or is it our office. But this allows architects to show a location, a visualization, and interactive change things, place up a furniture, change everything. But it has scaled. Also, automotive is using Unity for self-driving cars. The displays in the cars, all using Unity. But also, this was a nice example. BMW did a showcase where they had a virtual model and a real model showing next to each other. You couldn't see the difference. This allows to show and engage with the customer in a whole different level through Unity. Now, if you think about that, who is our community? And there's some really staggering numbers. More than 3 billion devices have a Unity experience installed in it. In the last year, 29 billion installs were done from Unity, made it Unity experiences. We have such a broad reach that 192 countries are using Unity, and we have more than 2 million actively students using our student licenses in the last 12 months. 45% of the top 1,000 mobile games are made with Unity. 50% of all new mobile games are powered with Unity, and more than 60% of all AR and XR content is powered by Unity. So, let's go back to our topic, how we scale the adoption with developer content, video content, how we scale that. Now, one thing I want to point out in that is that we're going to be very specific, okay? Because we have a really broad community. It's not a specific community. It goes from games to architecture. But it's not only broad, it's also very depth. We have students, we have enterprise accounts, we have to target different decision makers, as the technical user or the CTO or the CFO. For games, we actually have to also think about publishers reaching out. In the film industry, we have to look at the leading film studios, but also hold a vendor system that creates the content for them. And architecture, we also have to think about who is the architect, because they don't program. How are they going to work? So it's a really broad and depth. And that's why at Unity, we really work in an account-based marketing principle. Typical what we saw in evangelism is we create a message, and then we're going to go out there to tell it. We really have to flip that model around when we grow. In the past, we only had one specific community, brought one messaging. Now, nowadays, we have those huge community and all different facets. So the first thing that we have to ask, who do we target? What are we going to say to them? And where and how are we going to say it? So, in account-based evangelism, I think Matt can talk more about this.
Sure. So the key here is, right, focusing, instead of just saying we have a message that we want to bring to everybody, we say, okay, who are the people that we want to reach, and targeting and tailoring that messaging to them, right? So in the case of the work that we're doing in evangelism, we have a couple of examples here. In reaching beginners, one of the things we've been doing is public, basically webinars, live streams, using YouTube. We find that learning something new and difficult can be kind of a lonely and alienating experience, right? And so bringing people together in groups, we have usually 800 or 1,000 people at a time, and kind of building community for them. Bringing them together can kind of help them not to bounce off of that early part of the learning curve. We also are releasing a lot of new features and new technology that we want people to adopt, right? So we're doing overview video content, which is people who are already using the platform, bringing them into the new technology, adopting the newest version. We've been releasing, in the past year, we've been releasing 3 kind of major dot releases of our software, and we want to bring people to the new version of the platform each cycle. On the retention side, we have, continuing with retention, we are releasing basically a video, but then also demo content, right? We want people to be able to not just see something in action, but also touch it, dig deeply into it, and get started quickly, right? And so we found that that's been effective for us. And then on the other side, we have Unity publishes an asset store, which is basically a platform where people can purchase content, but also publish content, right? And we have people in our community who've built whole businesses just by selling, for example, a first-person character controller system, or selling 3D models that other people can integrate into their games. And so we use our platform to bring visibility to them as well.
And one thing I want to point out is that I wrote here awareness to adoption. What we see, and this slide is specific about the games community. I'm talking here the beginners, the technical enterprise, specific for games. I'm not going to go in the other markets. But what we saw is when you bring out those really beautiful demos out, that sometimes you get an opposite reaction of the community saying, wow, it's amazing what I can do, but I cannot do it, and I leave because of that. It's too difficult. So it's really important when you bring out beautiful material or really in-depth material that it continue the technical story with digestible parts so everybody can understand it and break it down or their needs. And that is why each of those bullet points that Matt wrote here are actually an ongoing campaign to continue those technical stories from really broad customer showcases or demos built.
Yeah, and so, as mentioned, there's a couple of key platforms. We're going to focus in a kind of a deeper tactical way on YouTube in this presentation because that's become a bigger and bigger part of what we do over the past few years. We also work very closely with we have an in-house team dedicated to onboarding. The public game jam, we call them broadcasts that we've been doing, have been a big part of that. We have a member of our evangelism team that focuses solely on influencers, or the influencer term, right, has a lot of different meanings. Community content creators, a lot of people who are making both tutorials, video tutorials, written tutorials, material like that. And then we also do targeted webinars to key accounts, right? So engaging with our larger customers, delivering, video presentations to invited guests that way.
And one of the things I want to point out is why YouTube, you wonder, why don't you put everything on your own website? But what we've seen in our data that more than 60% of our enterprise accounts actually goes first to YouTube to find something and to learn, and not to our website. Then another thing is YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, and especially when you look at rich interactive content, there you want to find it.
Yeah, and in this case, right, we see, so for us, one of the things that we're interested in is we want to reach and engage with our community, but we also want to grow our community, right? We want to reach new people, new developers, and get people on board on the platform. And one of the things that we've seen in terms of focusing on video content on YouTube is that it's an incredible way to basically acquire organic traffic, right? To reach people. We're not doing paid media in this case, right? We're not buying impressions. We're publishing content and attracting people to our platform through that. And we find that YouTube has an incredible mechanism for organic discovery, right? Everybody who's viewed content on YouTube has this experience. You watch one video, then there's an algorithmically suggested video that pops up on the side, and it brings new people into your ecosystem, right? And so this has been an incredibly useful part of our strategy. You know, we try to be data-driven in our activities. Like I'm sure pretty much everybody in this room, we have a relatively small team compared to the number of customers and developers that we need to. We have, you know, I don't even know how many developers we have now, but maybe 1,000 or 1,500 developers building and shipping new tech, and then what do we have, 30 evangelists or something like that, less. But then in terms of the content team that I run, there's 3 of us, right? So we have a huge surface area that we have to cover and a ton of demand for content, and so we need to be very mindful and intentional about how we're using those resources. What we've found in terms of evaluating, you know, blog posts, live broadcasts, and kind of pre-recorded or edited YouTube content, that YouTube content has been by far the highest performing content for us in terms of reach, right? In terms of reaching a broad audience. I would say, you know, envelope math comparing to blog posts maybe 4 times as many, right? We've heard a lot of people talking about, oh, we need to make more blog posts, right? Now, important caveat, right? Because we're not all making content that's necessarily super visually driven in our business, right? We're creating visual content, and so YouTube is a visual medium, and it's important for us and works well for us.
Nothing. Things keep popping up on the screen.
Oh, I missed it. Yeah, so kind of diving into it on a tactical level, right? One of the things that we're seeing, and I'm going to try to race through because I realize we're never going to have enough time, but one of the things that we are, YouTube specifically right now is in an environment that is very on-site conversion driven. Click-through rate on YouTube, right? This is a kind of an interesting, for everybody who engages with social media, you'll know that it's a noisy environment, right? And we are out there with our customers and with everybody else and our community members trying to get attention, right? We're not sort of on the top of the mountain broadcasting down. We're in the jungle with everybody else trying to stand out, right? So thumbnails have become more and more important on YouTube, right? Here's an example of a algorithmically generated or just randomly generated, basically, thumbnail that YouTube will put on your video if you don't craft a thumbnail. And then here's an example of a thumbnail that we created in Photoshop. The way I like to think of these, right, is you can think of it as kind of like a cover art or movie poster or a book cover for your YouTube video, right? It's incredibly important. It takes investment of time, maybe design resources, right? We have a person on our team who really invests a lot of time into this. We've seen a significant increase in per piece of content. In this case, views is the number we've been tracking. But going from something like 16,500 per video views to 27,500 in terms of optimizing thumbnails and also titles, right? Right now, the 2 metrics that YouTube is optimizing for most heavily are video title and video thumbnail. Those are and they've actually started to track and provide conversion metrics in the form of a click-through rate that you can get in your analytics to view, right? The important thing with thumbnail, the important thing with title is that obviously there's an SEO component, right? That you want to have relevant keywords that are going to populate through search, but also that it needs to be human readable and make a clear value proposition, right? What am I going to get if I watch this video? Is it a tutorial? What is it, right? Am I going to learn what I want to learn? And I think one of the other, well, I'll talk about that in a second. So we also spend a bunch of time on kind of the dark arts of trying to guess what the algorithm wants and doing on-site SEO. there's a site called Keyword Tool. There's many different ways to do keyword research, right? Keywordtool.io is a site that will provide you YouTube-specific keyword analysis, which we find useful. There's also shown here, there's a plugin that we use called vidIQ. There's a free version, but there's also a paid version that's really not expensive that will help you in terms of, this is a terrible screenshot, by the way, Carl, you can't see anything, that will help you in terms of picking tags for your video, but also in terms of optimizing the description text, which is very important, and even suggesting keywords to put in the title, right? And we've seen that that can provide some pretty significant lift as well. No, I can't click. There we go. So continuing with that theme, right? Having the keywords not just in the tags, but also in the title. You can see here vidIQ is giving us like ranking, where we're ranking on certain keywords, right? So you can see, is your video actually getting, succeeding in the results? And this is changing temporally, right? It's a constant kind of churning process, right? So when you release something, you might rank for a minute because you're new and they think maybe it's relevant, and then it'll drop back down. This is a little bit of like a really dirty tricks, right? But basically, one of the things that we've seen, and again, all of this stuff, right? We're interacting with an algorithm that's not documented and that's constantly changing, right? So some of these tips, use at your own risk. But basically, what we see here is that YouTube wants traffic to the platform, right? So if you take your video, make it, get it ready to be viewed, put it unlisted, which you can't read here on the slide, but make it unlisted, and then put it somewhere where it's going to get views, whether that's your blog, Twitter, forums, whatever. You get some inbound traffic to the site. Our hypothesis is that YouTube likes that, right? It sees inbound traffic. You're building new sessions on the site, and it will give it additional juice in the algorithm, and they'll serve it to more people. Again, not, it's a guess, but it's something we observe. This is one of our online evangelists, Sam Duantimore, alias Saiku. He's a guy who was a YouTube content creator before independently, who built up his own channel. We'll show that in a second once Carl stops messing with my slides. But he is someone who's a community content creator that we saw doing great stuff in the community and hired to join our team. There's two kind of components to that. One is that he was somebody who was already known and beloved by the community, right? So people saw him join our team and kind of level up and turn pro in whatever sense. And that was something that people appreciated. And he's been working for us for about 2 years now. We still see a bunch of comments on there. Oh my God, it's Saiku! People like seeing community members represented and embraced. And thank you. And this thing of focusing on people, right? People don't really want to talk to a brand. They don't really want to hear from a brand, right? We know this in the work that we do. People want to connect with a person, right? So foregrounding people and not being the faceless, anonymous voice is something that we see as effective. So in terms of some of the results that we've seen, providing kind of targeted, relevant links in the descriptions to our videos is our opportunity to drive people off YouTube to our own web properties and bring them deeper into our ecosystem. And we've seen some pretty significant conversion rates, between 10 all the way up to 25% with a lot of variation. Your mileage may vary, et cetera. And we track that through Bitly, right? These are just Bitly links, and then we calculate the number of video views to the number of people who clicked on the link and track that way. You want to go to the next one? Yeah, so another really important thread on YouTube right now is optimizing for watch time. 10 seconds. YouTube wants to maximize session time on the site, right? So they're now starting to favor more and more longer videos. It used to be that shorter videos that got higher number of views would perform better. Now what we see is that people who stay with the video and videos that create longer session times will be kind of privileged in the algorithm and shown more. What else do we have?
So during the presentations, I think you heard a lot here about leads, qualified leads, revenue, attribute revenue. So in all this structure, we really track how much infants in the pipeline we bring through that. Specifically from our movie files, that is a paid product that we're promoting, we track that, and also understand on the end how much the closed revenue fully is. Of course, it's all attributed in infants because it's not one thing that creates a user to buy a product. Now, one thing I really want to point out is that in our system that we really changed our philosophy from a qualified lead to a qualified account. We are not targeting not always an individual, but we're really targeting an account. And an account is made up of a lot of different individuals. We need to understand who they are, which messaging we do. What we covered here is really talking about targeting the core developer at a company to convert to a paying user. And we do that to targeted messaging with a target video and track that to which account it is. Now, one of the things that we also did to really scale massively our message is to work with inferences. We have one of those key inferences is Brachy, and there's multiple. But the main thing that I want to point out is here that one individual, Brachy's, who on a regular basis posts a movie file about Unity, has more than 900,000 followers, while our company with more than 2,000 employees has almost 700,000 followers. You would be thinking, well, what's going on? You don't do a good job? Well, when you look at companies such as big brands like Ferrari, for instance, Ferrari has 600,000 followers also. But when you look at the influencers, 2 million, 3 million followers is normal. Because the people are looking for an authentic messaging. And if you maybe, another very famous influencer is Doug Moreau. Doug Moreau works for Car Trader. He's an influencer himself and reviews cars. But in there, he really explains in his movie files why he's way more successful than Car Trader followers. Because he tells the quirky stuff about the cars. And that's our influencers. They tell the quirky things about the software, what it is, what a challenge they have, and how they sometimes solve it. What we've done is really build a program to enable other influencers to be successful. And that's how we came from one influencer, scaled to multiple influencers, with each different subsets of customer they target. And really focusing that. So over a course of less than 1 year, we went from almost 0 influencers to more than 3 million subscribed users through influencers. So just to the top 10. And what we learned in that process, remember, they're not employees. No matter how much you love them, how much they do their messaging, you always have to loop in legal, think about the taxes that you're going to implementing, because when you have to pay an influencer in another region where you don't have a legal identity, it becomes sometimes a legal problem through taxes too. So you have to be friends and work with the legal department, with your tax department, the company, and that's a challenge we had to overcome. But also it's very important to understand branding. If you don't enforce branding rules, you can actually legally lose your brand. So that's why you really have to implement branding rules, what they can use, what they cannot use. And what we also implemented for making info successful is really educate them about not just the tech, but also about the branding, tax, and legal to help them be successful, and also helping them connect with other influencers to learn from it. But one thing that I personally really learned in the journey was everybody in the company sees out of the blue, wow, successful influencers, I want to use them. And everybody in the company is trying to jump on them. What we made was a funnel system, a gatekeeper system, and everybody in the company has to work through one gatekeeper. Yes, it's maybe a limit, but with very strict rules, because otherwise everybody is paying the influencer and the pricing just goes skyrocketing high because different departments are actually competing on pricing to the same influencer. So that's one thing that we learned too. And one thing is like the golden rule of 80-20, making sure that you keep the authenticity, that you just don't bombard your influencers with money, with offers to tell your story. Let them be authentic, and also be ready to get fierce feedback from your influencers. Accept that they're going to give feedback on your product, that you don't have to sit there paranoid behind your, in front of your screen. Ooh, there might be someone giving feedback on my new feature that maybe not perfect. They're going to tell something about it. Be ready about it, learn from it, and work with them. So, we're at the end, and my call to action is go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, and click on the notification button, and you will keep learning about Unity and see how we do online evangelism.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you all.
Thank you.